So today, for this video, we're going to get back on the topic of merchandise for touring and for bands, something that we've talked about a lot, but we've never really talked about this specific subject, which is bootleg merchandise. I want to cover some, bases here about bootleg, like the history of bootleg merch with the music industry, what it is, and talk about maybe why you shouldn't support it. But the whole reason that this came up is because I was on our metalcore the other day. I know I like to hate myself sometimes too. And there was a post that was made that said thoughts on unofficial merch. And by unofficial merch, I assumed they meant bootleg. So here you go. Posted 3 days ago, thoughts on unofficial merch. This person says, so just curious where everybody stands on this. I have a close friend group. All 4 of us like a lot of the same bands, frequently go to shows and festivals together, and can often have lengthy, thoughtful conversations regarding music from any genre without getting our feelings hurt. So it is to say, when it comes to tunes, I think we'd be considered pretty passionate on the subject. Recently, they've been buying a ton of unofficial merch. Designs are sick, yes, but I can't help the feeling like it's totally not cool to buy unofficial merch, especially when a lot of the bands we really like and whose Fugazi shirts and stickers they now own do not make a whole hell of a lot of coin off their music alone. I know from personal experience how much a touring band relies on merch sales to keep the ship from sinking. I've brought this up to them before and their responses were practically the same. While I didn't pay for anything the band will pocket, it's just as supportive because I'm walking around with their band name on my t-shirt, like a walking billboard. I don't know, I just really disagree with the concept and their explanations on it. I in no way condemn anybody for their choice of merch, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't care at all. What do you guys think? So for me, it's an interesting topic to bring up because there is a lot of bootleg merch for bands out there. And like this person said, bands rely on their merchandise sales to give them extra income. It's an additional revenue source on top of music and streaming and touring and stuff like that. But I don't think this is as relevant? I don't think this is as common with smaller bands than a lot of people would think. But before we dive in, let's talk about the history of bootlegging with merch, because it does have a fascinating history with live concerts that actually feeds into why official merchandise became a thing. Years and years ago, when I first started doing merchandise in the business, I was the assistant tour manager for a merchandise manager that at the time was in his late 60s, and I was in my early 20s. It was kind of a cool situation to learn from this guy. But he's been touring since the early 70s. And he's told me so many stories about merchandise and, selling merch for bands in the early days. And he actually told me about how merchandise became a thing for bands to make their own merch and sell it at shows. And it's due to bootlegging. So back in the day, like early 70s and stuff, when there was a big concert coming to an area, people would literally make bootleg merchandise with the band's names on them, and they'd put like the tour date on it and stuff like that. And they would go to these shows and they would sell them outside of the shows, because at the time, a lot of those bands didn't have their own official merchandise that they were selling at the shows. It really wasn't a thing. So that became very popular. Local printers would make bootleg shirts and they would go to the shows and sell them. Then when it started becoming like really popular and tons of people were doing it, some of the smarter merch people, bootleg people at the time, would actually go to the venues early and somehow get a hold of the tour manager for the tour and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I got a ton of t-shirts with the band's name on it that I want to sell outside. If I give you a cut of it, will you make sure that all the other people selling merch get kicked out of here and just let me officially sell it? And that became a thing. So these tour managers and these bands started allowing people to bootleg merchandise in the parking lot in exchange for a merch fee. So the original merch fees were actually given to the tour managers of these bands by the people in the parking lot selling the merch. Now, whether that money actually made it to the bands or not, or the tour managers pocketed that money, I don't know, because back then things were all on paper and very sketchy. There was no digital tracking of anything. But eventually it evolved to the point where some of these bands started asking some of these bootleggers to come on tour and create like an official kind of business for them. So the early bootleggers back decades and decades ago became the official merch people for the bands. They often ran their own printing business and they printed all the shirts, and they and a couple other people would usually load up in a van and follow the tour city to city. They weren't like in an official capacity with the band. They didn't tour on the tour buses and stuff. They originally just followed them from town to town. And then the bands would eventually let them come inside and sell the merch. And there you go. And then eventually it evolved to bands had their full merch operation. And then they had the merch people come on tour with them. And that's kind of how the whole thing started and took over. Now, nowadays, there is still bootlegging, even when there is official merchandise at shows. But a lot of the times, this bootlegging happens at like arena shows and bigger. Like, I've never in my life gone to a club show. Like, every single show I've gone to Nashville recently, whether it was Sabaton, Slaughter to Prevail, Lorna Shore, doesn't matter. Nobody's bootlegging at those shows because at club shows, there's not a ton of people at those to make a big profit. At arena shows, bootleggers come out in full force. They will usually somehow get the design of the tour t-shirt beforehand. Oftentimes tours for their tour t-shirt will use the official logo that they've released on like the poster for the tour, and that becomes their tour shirt. And then they put the dates on the back. And bootleggers have figured that out. So bootleggers will make bootleg t-shirts with the logo of the tour and then the tour dates on back. And then they will travel city to city bootlegging that merch, illegally selling that merch because the official merch is sold inside. So if you ever go to an arena or a stadium show and you see the person outside in the parking lot, like always in the parking lot, yelling band shirts, $10, $20, whatever, those are bootleg shirts. Those are not official. Those are not licensed by the band. That money does not go to the band. There are actually bootleg crews in the US that is their full-time job. There are crews of like 5-6 people that travel in vans and they print these bootleg shirts. Usually the quality is horrible because they buy shirts that have defects that they get wholesale. You'll notice if you ever buy a tour shirt, if you look at the tag, usually the tag is cut. Like it has a slit in it. That means that shirt is defect. And they buy those shirts from people that make them that we're just going to get rid of them as defects. And then they print on those. So if you ever get a bootleg shirt, check the tag and see if there's a cut on it. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm recording right now, but you know, whatever. Mowgli, come here. Today's Mowgli's 10th birthday. Claire wanted me to tell everybody. Mowgli, come here. Mowgli, you old man, come here. Hi, buddy. He's a big boy. Who's a big boy? Oh, he's a big boy. The chat's on screen. Nobody can see. He's a big boy. Penny, get out. It's not your birthday. Yeah, I guess. I'll probably include that in there. Where was I? Oh yeah, bootleg merch. So the crazy thing about these bootleggers is that when I was doing merch on the arena tours, like the, Van Halen, Nickelback, Journey, stuff like that, bootleggers were so common that we actually got to know these guys. It was kind of like a game every day where bootleggers know as long as they're not on the arena or stadium's property, there's pretty much nothing you can do about it, believe it or not. So we would go outside and we would kind of just check where they were. And if they were up near the arena, we'd be like, come on, man, you know how it goes. Get back across the street in the parking lot. And they'd be like, all right, man, whatever. And so we actually got to know some of these bootleg crews and it became a funny kind of game. Now, if they come inside the arena, that's completely different. We can get them in trouble. But one of the things as a merchandise manager that you should always know not to do, don't go after the bootleg crews. I've actually known some merchandise managers that thought that they were going to be like tough guys with these bootleg people and chase them down in the parking lot and try and take all their shit. You chase a bootlegger, you turn a corner, 5 of their friends are waiting there and you get the shit kicked out of you. I have seen it happen, literally. So what most merchandise management companies will do is for big arena shows like that, we would actually hire off-duty police officers to patrol the outside of the arena to make sure that the bootleggers weren't coming in. We'd also have court injunctions that these officers can serve them with. So if any of the bootleggers were on the property of the arena, we could actually have these off-duty police officers serve them with injunctions and be like, it's like, all right, now you got to show up in court for, like copyright stuff and sometimes selling without a license and stuff like that. But it's so common that it's actually become kind of a thing in the merchandise world where it's just like, some people don't care anymore. A lot of merch companies I worked for like 10 years ago were just like, don't even worry about it. Like, don't even worry about it ever. Like if they're out there, they're out there. It's not worth you getting into an argument over or jeopardizing your safety over. If they didn't want to hire off-duty cops, they would just say, yeah, listen, we'll lose a little money to the people buying in the parking lot, but we're still going to make a ton of money on the merchandise inside. So it's a thing. It's a thing. And that's why I tell that story, is because I want you guys to know, like, if you ever go to an event and you see somebody in a parking lot just walking around selling that stuff off their shoulder like a pile of shirts, that is unofficial merch that you're basically paying somebody else's bills, and none of that is going to the band. And it is a full-time job for some of these bootleggers. Like I said, there's just been a whole year, like 3 different tours in a year. I've seen the same people traveling, following tours that we've been on, selling bootleg merch because they make a lot of money. Think about that. If they're selling a t-shirt in a parking lot for $20, you sell 10 shirts, it's $200. Sell 100 shirts, that's 100 shirts is $2,000 right there. So if you get a bunch of guys out there in a crew, a bootlegging crew, 5 people say, and they're each selling 100 shirts a night at $20, dude, they're each making $2,000 a night. Now, obviously you gotta, save some of that money for printing and stuff, reprinting merchandise and stuff like that. And then they don't have to pay a merch fee either. Yeah. And like the Striker Project in chat just said, with 10,000 people walking by, the odds are pretty good. Dude, I've seen bootleg merchandise teams clean up. But I wanted to tell those couple of stories to lead into this, like the thoughts on unofficial merch. Like, I will fully admit, I definitely own some bootleg things, but it's because I haven't been able to find something from that band. And it's not t-shirts and stuff. I'll never buy a bootleg t-shirt because they're usually crap quality. They don't fit right, whatever. To be honest, a lot of official merchandise is crap quality and doesn't fit well either. But patches, specifically, like on my battle jacket, there are definitely a handful of patches on there that I either could not find from a band because they don't make patches, or they don't ship to the US from their stores in Europe or something like that. So I have some patches that I have bought like third party from people on Etsy, or I've made myself and stuff like that. So with something like that, I don't want to take a moral high ground because I've definitely bought some like third party unofficial patches and stuff. But yeah, this whole argument that this person is bringing up with their friends, like, is kind of interesting because, I've said many times, I don't care what people spend their money on. This channel is more for just kind of educating people on what's going on. So I don't care if people buy bootleg merchandise, just know that your money on that is definitely going to whoever made it and not the actual band. So if you're concerned about supporting that band, try as hard as you can to find it. But the point that this person made on here that said, while I didn't pay for anything the band will pocket, it's just as supportive because I'm walking around with their band name on my t-shirt like a walking billboard. I can see that argument. That's almost like the promoter that tries to pay local bands an exposure. Hey, I want you guys to play this show, but I can't pay you, but the exposure is good. You know what I mean? So I kind of get that argument because you are supporting a band. That is why I've never liked, like the gatekeepy metalheads that get mad about, they see somebody wearing a band t-shirt and they're like, oh, name 3 songs. I bet you don't even know about that band. I've never been bothered by that because I'm like, hey, if some like celebrity, like listen, like Kardashian, we've seen that. Kardashians have worn Slayer t-shirts before. I'll tell you right now, man. They're posers for sure, but if a Kardashian wearing a Slayer t-shirt turns one of their fans or into a Slayer fan by thinking like, oh, I've never heard of that band, I'll go check them out because a Kardashian's wearing it, fucking cool. Like, whatever. It is good exposure for sure. I've definitely been asked before about a band shirt or hoodie I'm wearing by somebody in public. Yeah, Shiraz just said, I love the knowing smile and nod when I'm wearing a band t-shirt. Absolutely. I love that. I love wearing my band stuff in public and having just a random person just be like, like that, what's up. But yeah, since we're filming live on Twitch, which I like doing for those of you on YouTube, a lot of people complain that I've been doing videos on Twitch lately, which, I mean, I don't care. I know I used to do a lot of videos just sitting here and then uploading on YouTube, but there's something actually cool about doing this live on Twitch because of the people in chat bringing up other things and asking questions. We've had some good conversations with these. And funny things happening. I'm curious, since we're here on chat, like, what do you guys think overall, honestly? Are you for or against bootleg merch, or do you guys not care really? Like, the big thing here, too, is that I've never really seen a lot of bands complaining about bootleg stuff either. Even the bigger bands, even the bands I've worked for where there's been bootleggers, I've never really heard them complain about it. And a lot of people in chat are saying they don't care, or they just walk past and ignore it or whatever. Dirty Tramp says, I think it's better for the band than it is worse. I kind of agree with that, actually. It's like you said, while that money isn't going directly to the band, there are still going to be people out there supporting the band's name on them. Striker Project says, for huge bands, I really don't care, but bootleg merch for a band like Archspire would bug me. Yeah, I've seen that argument a lot, actually. I've seen a lot of people be like, nah, for the big bands, who cares? But if it's a small band, like independent band or a smaller sign band or something, like, yeah, buy their merch. I could back that a bit. Yeah. Psycho Nerd says, if I can't afford a shirt from the band, but I really want one, I'll buy a bootleg. You know, that's another thing that's a big part of this conversation is, like, we all know, like, if you're going to an arena to see a show, a lot of those t-shirts can be like $50. Not everybody has $50. So if a bootleg for $20 is the next best thing, I would imagine a lot of people would do that for sure. Raygor says, are people bootlegging small bands though? I don't think on a large scale. Like I said earlier, I've never gone to like a club show in my area and seen anybody bootlegging like, you know, like metal band merch. It's usually just the arena or bigger sized bands. I'm sure there's people out there that would buy a band's, like a bootleg t-shirt from a band like that online if they couldn't find something in their country or if it was expensive or something. But I've never actually seen like bootleg crews or anybody selling bootleg shirts at smaller metal shows now. Silent Chaos says homemade merch is cool sometimes. I agree with that, actually. Like, that's one of the things I don't mind. Homemade merch is kind of unique and interesting as long as that person like isn't like out there mass producing and selling it, I guess. I've seen a lot of homemade like jackets and t-shirts and stuff like that that I've thought are really, really cool. But anyways, this is just an interesting conversation. I just wanted to talk about like the history of bootlegging and kind of talk about how it's working. So maybe people have a little more knowledge of that when they go to shows and stuff. I'll let you guys that are watching on YouTube later discuss in the comments what you feel about bootlegging, because I'm always curious to see your guys' thoughts on this. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you guys are the fans. You guys are the consumers buying the stuff. So bootleg, yay or nay? Or are there situations where you're fine with it? So leave your comments. Those of you that were here on Twitch live for this conversation, thank you for being here. I appreciate that a ton. Hold on, before we wrap up, Adversary just said, would bootleg TankTheTech merch be a concern? I don't think I'd care. If somebody started selling TankTheTech merch, I don't think I would care. Unless I found out that they started making like tens of thousands of dollars a month selling TankTheTech merch, which, let's be real, that's not happening. Then I might be like, hey, you either give me a cut of that or you stop, and then I'm going to start selling merch. But I don't think that's happening. But anyways, to those of you on Twitch, thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate doing these live, and I appreciate you guys a ton. To those of you on YouTube later, again, leave your comments below, discuss more. I always enjoy reading that. You can also join us on Twitch for these conversations if you would like. You can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I will probably be changing my schedule soon, though, because I'm going back out on tour. And I will stream as much as I can, but it's probably not going to be on those days. I'm also on a ton of different social media. You can find me at TankTheTech on pretty much everything. But until next time, Twitch chat. Thank you for being here. Those of you on YouTube later, thank you for watching. Wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will see you very soon.